Hi, Conspirituality listeners. I wonder if you caught Bill Maher's guests on this past Friday on his show on HBO, who were Bret Weinstein and Heying. It was an interesting conversation. It left me pretty frustrated though, and I just want to say that I feel like right now, with the pandemic and with the role that vaccines are going to play in our recovering from the pandemic, any conversation on a big platform, Bill Maher gets between 1 and 2 million views, I think, per episode live, and then there's also all the people who watch it on demand. Any conversation on a platform that big about these topics, to me, there's a simple binary that I think we have to apply. Does the conversation add to more clarity, or does it create more confusion on the topic? And we have to recognize that this is a crucial topic, vaccines, and vaccines in relation to COVID-19, especially right now. And it's also a topic that is highly charged and that is flooded with misinformation and conspiracy theories. People are already very confused and don't know what to believe. So I think there is a level of responsibility that has to be embraced around trying to create clarity and trying to cut through confusion. So they had an interesting conversation about whether or not the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which causes COVID-19, had escaped from the Wuhan research lab. That's an open question. The majority of scientists believe no. There are some who believe maybe it did. Less likely, more likely. We will find out as time goes on. That's fine. I wish that Bret and Heather had spent less time defensively trying to make a case for why their stance that they think it's highly likely it escaped from a lab is not just a crackpot conspiracy theory. If they spent less time trying to make that case and more time doing the thing that scientists should do when they appear on big public platforms, which is bring the data. Talk about the data. Now we can set aside the lab escape hypothesis because they also talked about the vaccines. And one of the things that Heather Heying talked about, and her and Bill Maher had a whole very confused exchange about it, is whether or not we should trust the mRNA vaccines and whether or not the AstraZeneca vaccine, which doesn't use mRNA, is safer or is more sort of tried and tested, right? Has a better track record. And we're going to get into this on the podcast this Thursday. I'm going to break all of this down and try to create some clarity, because I think that's the responsibility we have when we wade into this territory. Yeah? But instead of bringing data to bear on that conversation, that topic too remained a sort of speculative, well, you know, common sense kind of conversation. And this is the problem. Most people's common sense intuitions about these topics are very, very fallible. That's why data is so essential. That's why scientific method is as powerful and as important as it is, because it cuts through a lot of the places where our speculative common sense intuitions are often unreliable or often wrong. So I just want to say, Bret Weinstein and Heather Heying, if you see this, be more responsible. Try and create more clarity. Try and bring more data into the conversation. I've looked at videos on their podcast. They're not doing that enough. What they're doing more is sort of staking out, hey, we're going to be the edgy rebels who say the thing that is taboo because we think there's sort of a mainstream kind of censoring of what you're allowed to say, or there's a mainstream censuring that goes on where you get called a crackpot conspiracy theorist or you get called right-wing if you say the wrong thing. And I agree with them that some of that may be problematic and it may be unfair and it may be anti-scientific and it may be anti-intellectual. Yes, okay. But then you have a responsibility to make your case based on data, not just based on, well, it kind of seems this way, and well, anyone would think, like for example with the difference between AstraZeneca and the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, well, you would think the AstraZeneca one is based on something that has been around for longer, so it seems like it would be safer. Well, what does the data say? And so far what we know is the data says that all three vaccines have very similar levels of side effects, and the side effects are transient and mild, and they're evidence that the desired immune response is being elicited by the vaccine. There isn't data that says, oh, you know, these newer types of vaccines are resulting in more problems. So I think that's really important. And I'm going to leave it there. I'll see you on the podcast.